afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I am so happy to have all of you join us today. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I know it's precious, and for that reason, I want to give you the best of the best. So, before we get started on today's show, I want to welcome and say hello to Amnon, because without him, let me tell you, I don't know where I would be.
You'd be home.
I'd be home. That's very true. I would be home.
Oh, now you'll be at lunch, probably.
Well, maybe I'd be lunching. Yeah. I'd be out lunching.
Instead,
maybe
she's
I'd be
working
visiting.
here.
I'd be doing drive-bys to preschool, seeing my grandchildren. Who knows? But Amnon keeps it all together. So thank you so much. Everybody
Thank
needs
you.
an Amnon. Thank you. Doing all right?
Doing just fine.
You had a good weekend?
Great week so far.
Great week
so far. I mean, it's raining, but it's okay.
Yeah, we need it, right? Well, we always need water.
Yeah,
How
I
can
was
you not
saying
need
yesterday
water?
was the first day this year that I went outside and it felt like fall. It smelled like fall. It looked like fall.
Yeah, I love it. Squishing
nice.
around those leaves. Yeah, I love it. So we're going to get started. If you have been with us before, you know that this show is for you. And I will tell you now, and I'll tell you again, feel free anytime you want to call in, as often as you like. Because this is about breaking free. And we're all on a path. And every step we take is a freedom step. So you got a question, you got a need, please feel free to call in. This is the safest place you have. I offer that to you. So you can call in to 919-518-9773. That's if you have a phone, you can do that. If you are using Skype, you can call in on Skype at computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice, anytime you like. And also, we have a chat. So right near the video that you're watching me on now is a line. It says nickname. You can put your name, your nickname, whatever you like, and take part in our chat. There's some really lovely people in there, and you can ask questions. You can engage. You can, just check in with them, whatever you feel like, because we want to make this a great experience. So today we have a very interesting guest. So I want you to get a piece of paper and a pencil, because there are going to be some things that you're going to want to write down. So my guest today, and I had the pleasure of meeting her last week for the first time face-to-face, and we've been talking a lot over the phone, and it's really terrific because we have guests from all over the world. And lately, we've had a lot of guests from right here in our back door, and we have a wealth of knowledge. So Hanna Hasl-Kelchner, and I know I said that right because I've been practicing, is my guest today. And she is a business consultant. She is an attorney. She's an advocate for businesses, entrepreneurs doing the right thing for their business so that they can do what they do best, and that is do their business well and protect themselves. So let me introduce to you Hanna. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
It's really nice to have you. So Hanna, where should we start?
Oh, you're the master of ceremonies. You tell me.
Well, I know myself, and I know a lot of my colleagues, we're in business. And some of us have employees, some of us don't. But the idea is, I think it's very interesting today because many, many, many of us do not have to work for a company. There's a lot of us out here, brave, gutsy, doing our own thing. And I think that's really important. That's freedom to me. And so another level of freedom is to protect that thing that we so desire and we're doing, that we're doing on our own. And we can. There's lots of people working from home. There's all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. So you're a leadership guru, expert. And so what's the first thing when somebody comes to you? What's their first question?
Well, it depends on where they are in their business. But I mean, I see my role as empowering responsible business leaders with legal literacy so that they can build their best business. People just don't know what they don't know. And then when they get blindsided, especially as their business grows with something like a lawsuit, it gets ugly really fast. And then it's a big distraction to their business. It takes a lot of time, more time than they realize. It's not like a speeding ticket where, you pay somebody a couple $100 and say, let me know how it works out.
Yeah, really.
It's going to take a whole lot more of your time and your money. And the thing is, if you feel that you've been unjustly accused in a lawsuit, whether that's an employee that's suing you for discrimination or wrongful termination, or maybe it's a customer or a vendor who says, hey, wait a minute, this contract didn't work out. you're going to feel, hey, wait a minute, I'm right. And getting through that process is just, it's expensive. You've got better things to do with your time. So if you can do it right from the start, that just means you can keep on rolling. You don't have those speed bumps in your business. And that's what I help people understand, so that they can put the right systems in place to let some of that work on autopilot.
So now you are an attorney.
I am, but I am not a law firm. I am, so if somebody has a specific legal problem,
that's not you.
That's not me.
Did you ever do that?
Oh, yes.
You did that?
Oh, yes.
And now you've changed. Why? Why have you changed?
I've changed because rather than, what's the old parable about giving someone a fish, I teach them how to fish. Not that I want to turn them into lawyers. You don't need to be a lawyer. But, if you can anticipate issues early, you can manage them. And you've got so much more freedom, if you will, and opportunity if you can spot it early. It's like maintenance in anything. Your car, what are you going to do? Do you go for regular maintenance and oil changes and so forth? Or do you wait until you have the flat tire in the middle of a rainstorm? Some people do. They're like, well, I don't have time. All right, well, then you're going to have to make time when it breaks. And it's only going to cost more. And it's the same thing with your business. I have seen so many businesses as they grow fast, like outrunning their headlights. And then, boom, something happens. And they have no choice but to slow down and fix it. And sometimes it's a reputation loss in the process. I mean, the costs are so much more than just paying a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. So what do you see as, I'm sure there's certain themes. Are there certain themes?
Yes, there are certain
So
themes.
what are some of the themes that you see?
Well, some of the themes are, it just comes down to managing expectations. Matter of fact, I had a conversation with someone this morning about that. And they're in marketing and communications. And they're like, managing expectations. Yeah, think about how you do that. Marilyn, if you and I are in business together and let's say we have a deal going, all right, and suddenly something goes wrong, I'm disappointed or you're disappointed. I feel like our relationship is good enough where you say, hey, Hannah, come on, this is what I thought was going to happen. Here's what really happened. And you'd expect me to make good on it. And I would. But sometimes that just doesn't work out, So how do people who don't have good relationships, or maybe not as well as they think they do, how do they manage expectations in a way that sticks? Because if you're working in a bigger company, the Maryland today could be promoted into another division, maybe to another part of the country, or internationally. And I don't have Marilyn there anymore. So her replacement, maybe I don't get along with her so well.
So it's not enough just to shake a hand.
Well, I've had people say that. Oh, we have a contract. It's a handshake. It's a verbal agreement. It's like, great. And what does it say? Well, it's in my head. Oh, good. How do we shake that loose, And it's like, you think you could change your mind, And that's just it. So it's just about good fences make good neighbors. You put it down on paper. You try to be as clear as possible. And, the remarkable thing is when you go through that negotiation process, the relationship develops. You work through what might be potential misunderstandings and speed bumps. And then the best contract is one that you negotiate well, you sign, and never have to look at because you've developed that understanding and that rapport.
So, it's interesting because I am the co-founder of a networking organization for women. And we have hemmed and hawed many times about having some agreement with our organizers. They're not employees, right? They're volunteers, basically. But there is a level or a standard of participation, right, that you want to maintain. But the contracts always have so many legal jargon that it becomes scary. And I would love just a plain piece of paper. So where do you go with that kind of thing?
Well, you put your finger on it when you say, the jargon becomes scary.
It's so scary.
And it doesn't need to be, you need to have somebody draft it that can put it in plain English so that when people read it, they know what it means. They know what's expected of them. They know what they have to deliver so that your organization, your networking group can succeed because ultimately that's what it's all about.
And that's okay? That's legal?
Yeah.
So for instance, you mentioned these relationships, or a project. Yeah. It doesn't have to be where I can have my company, you can have your company, but we do a project together.
Sure.
Based on that project, we can have some kind of documentation.
Absolutely.
That says this is the expectation of doing this project.
I encourage it,
And that's
because
what
it's it's about the deliverables, so that people aren't disappointed. Because when they're disappointed, then they get angry, and when they get angry enough, and especially when enough money is at stake, they do things like sue. It's like, no.
just a simple little thing.
Well, because it's
Right.
accountability. They're looking for accountability. Sometimes they're looking for vindication.
So does it matter how big the project, or it's freedom, just having everything down on paper, regardless of whether it's a little thing or a big thing. What do you?
Well, it all depends on how you want to spend your time. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was doing a kitchen remodel, right? Now, she grew up in a family where her father was a general contractor. So she was around the business and it just absorbed stuff at the kitchen table, right? And so when she, worked with the designer and, the installers for her kitchen, she was very particular. She put as much down, in a sheet and an addendum as possible. It's all part of the contract. This is what's supposed to be delivered. And you know how it is with those construction
Yes,
remodeling.
I do. My husband's a
There you go.
Yeah.
There's always something
Yeah,
that comes up you don't
always.
expect, right?
Right.
I mean, it's part of the process. And, when they started installing something and it wasn't right, she'd go, this, and they'd start to give her some feedback. And she's like, it's in the contract. End of discussion. It just clarified it like that. It simplified things. Not, to me, simplification is freedom,
Yeah.
And if something comes up you couldn't truly anticipate, well, that's fine, which is why the process of negotiating helps build the relationship so you can continue to move forward and build the bridge.
It's because I never liked contracts, really. I always felt like the handshake or the heart to heart kind of conversation was binding and was enough. I mean, if I, shared my heart, you shared your heart, we shared these things, and it was okay. But I am beginning to see that you can create a contract from the heart that
Yes.
stipulates all the right things, that leaves everything out in the open, where there's no, question about whose job is what, who's responsible for what.
Yeah.
And it really does make for a much closer relationship, and a relationship that really has the potential of really working well.
And that's the
You
way
know?
it should work. And
Right.
it's interesting that you characterized it like that, because I think there are other people, and they may be listening, that have kind of that same fear or trepidation that there could be something in there that they don't know about, that's a loophole, that's going to trip them up and somehow come back to bite them.
Right.
But you know what? If you see a contract, somebody presents you with something, and you don't understand what something means, then ask questions, because you would be bound by it. So it's fair game to ask questions. And someone's like, oh my God, that's going to make me look stupid or unsophisticated. No, you know what? Not asking the questions.
Right.
And, it doesn't have to be in the terms of, well, I don't know what this means. You could just ask it in terms of, could you clarify what you meant by this, or what the purpose of this is? And then see what they say. Because sometimes people, especially a larger company, will hand you a cookie cutter contract and say, well, that's our standard agreement. Standard for whom?
So this is for anything, though, really.
It
this
is.
is not just for in the business relationship. This is in any relationship,
Well,
right?
it's fair game. I mean, if you're supposed to play by the rules, you need to know what they are and buy into them. And that's all a contract is.
Right.
So, it should reflect the understanding of the parties, not bring in a whole bunch of other stuff. And if it does, then the question is why? Why do you need it? Why is it important? Those are all fair questions.
Sure, but I know that when people, let's say, sign a contract when a non-compete,
Yeah.
I bet you have a lot of those.
They come up.
They come up,
Yeah.
and people don't know what, they'll sign anything because they want the job, or they'll almost sign anything because they want a job, and then you go start to look, and you can't work within a 500-mile radius. I mean, all these crazy things that really can't hold water, right?
Well, when it comes to non-compete agreements, first of all, some states don't even recognize them. California, a non-compete is void for public policy. But you may not be in California.
Void for public policy.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, California, the legislature decided that these are unfair. So they're not
Okay.
legal in California. Now, that doesn't mean they're not legal in other states. But the key to whether or not it can stick is reasonableness. So, I mean, if you are a senior manager and you have responsibility for global affairs, well, then that's your oyster, the world. On the other hand, if you've got a 3 county distribution area and somebody wants to restrict you for the world, well, now that might be a little overreaching. So it's about what's reasonable.
That's right.
What's reasonable. And if somebody hands you a contract and says a 500-mile radius, then, ask why. I understand when you're negotiating, you're looking for that job, especially in today's job market, that's not so easy. So it's tempting, but it would be wise then, since you are putting your livelihood and your family's lifestyle on the line, maybe you want to talk to a lawyer and say, okay, how bad is this? What is reasonable to push back on? Because maybe it's not the 500-mile radius, but it's what you can do in that 500-mile radius. So maybe you can have a job with a competitor, but doing a different type of job than you're currently doing.
And you wouldn't know that necessarily if you just took what you saw.
Because it's scary.
It's scary.
It's already flipping you out, saying, I can't get a job, I can't work, so know what I'm going to do. Right. And now you're already resentful going into that job, which is not great for onboarding process. You're already ticked off at them because you feel like you put yourself in a straitjacket, and it may not be so bad. So if you're getting a contract, it's really a good idea to get legal advice from somebody who can give you the skinning, and then you can decide what's the trade-off. Is this worth it? Maybe it is for a short period of time. Maybe you're at a stage of life where retirement is going to happen in X number of years, and you're looking at this particular position to take you through to the end, in which case, who cares about the 500 miles? You're not going to be working, you're going to be spending time with your grandchildren.
But it's no different than, like getting involved in a relationship, for instance, and you see some red flags, right? You want to be careful not to get involved in that relationship if you're seeing red flags or orange flags. So, same thing with an employer. If you're seeing some red or orange flags, and you're, like Hanna said, you're going to, your family, and you're putting your livelihood on the line, you want to check out what's going on. Does that mean, Hanna, that when you are presented with a contract, for pretty much any contract, unless you're presenting the contract, that you have to go see an attorney?
Well, it depends on your risk tolerance. There's all kinds of contracts. Some have a lot at stake, some have not so much at stake. So you have to decide, what's the worst that could happen? If this contract goes bad, is somebody going to die? Probably not. How bad is it going to hurt me financially? Can I afford it? Then maybe you don't want to. On the other hand, if there's more at stake, maybe it couldn't hurt to talk to a lawyer. And that doesn't mean, oh my God, I'm going to look at thousands of dollars in legal fees. Right. You can say, look, this is I'm making it up, 5-page agreement, all right? I'd like a top-line review, and, I only want to pay X amount. Set a budget. But it could be worth it, and tell them what you're concerned about the most. And I'll give you an example. This was a company in a startup mode, and they had some proprietary technology. They're in the process of getting a patent, okay? All the right things happening. But, in a startup, they're small, they don't have a lot of cash flow. And so what happened? All of a sudden, they were presented with a fabulous offer from somebody. Somebody was going to give them a contract. But they're like, they did not have it reviewed by a lawyer. Well, one of their coaches, business counselors, kind of looked it over and said, do you realize you've just given away half your patent rights? Did you have your lawyer look at this? No, well, we read it and it looked okay to us. Well, why didn't you call him? Well, we already owed him about $4,000 and we just didn't want to save the fee. But you just gave away half your company and you didn't realize it. If you had called him and said, look, I know I owe you some money, but we're in a pinch. Could you just take a quick look at this and tell me what you see? Now, they wouldn't have gone with a fine-tooth comb. But I'll tell you.
They would have seen that.
They would have seen that. That would have jumped out at them.
And would most attorneys work with people like that?
Yes. Most respectable ones would.
Okay, so you heard it here. Okay, so we're going to get into more of this, but please feel free if you've got a legal question or you want to know how something is working in the business world. You're getting started with something. You maybe you're an artist and you're putting up your art somewhere. I mean, what are your rights? I mean, what does all this mean? So call in 919-518-9773, or you can contact us through Skype at computers. Remember, that's plural. 2 K voice. And also, there's lots of people on the chat, And I don't see too many questions there, so I'd love to see questions there. But in the meantime, if you're there and you want to ask a question, feel free. You can just put your name in the little line and take part in the chat. So you've also founded an e-learning academy,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For legal protection. So tell us about that.
Well, my concern is to at least raise people's awareness, just basic legal literacy. I found, and it doesn't even matter, even in some very senior executive suites, people just don't know what they don't know. And how are they supposed to? It's really not their fault. How are you supposed to learn this? It's school of hard knocks, And usually when people deal with a lawyer, it's like, oh my God, something bad's happened. Speeding ticket, DUI, or a house closing that got held up for one thing or another, or they got sued. Well, there's a happy thing.
Really?
Or a divorce. I mean, in your personal experience, none of these are happy events.
Right.
And so it's difficult for people to think of it as a business tool and something that can advance their business, not just to protect what they have, but to use it offensively in order to build their business. And contracts being one of them. For people that don't have them, well, it's not a problem until there's a problem, and it's a big one.
So, but let me just ask you one question before we go far.
Sure.
So is a contract any kind of a document that the 2, 3, 4, whoever it is that's involved sign it? Is that a contract? Or does it need something else
Well,
in there?
there's a couple of pieces to it. I mean, there's an offer, there's an acceptance. Somebody's making an offer, do you accept it? And that's part of it. And whether there's consideration. Is there something of value being exchanged? It could be a service for a service, doesn't have to be dollars, but there's certain elements that make it a contract, that make it legally binding.
Okay.
Now that's not to say the parties can't agree to change their mind along the way, but at least it's that baseline that says, look, at point A, this is what we say the rules of the game are. Marilyn, it's funny, and you may see this with your grandchildren. If they are out and they see a bunch of kids playing in the park or something, or they have a pickup game in the street, they want to be part of it, and they go out there, and what's one of the first things they ask? What are the rules? Well, how come we don't do that as grown-ups?
Right.
And if one of them doesn't play by the rules, that's not fair. That's not right. They don't hesitate. But somehow when we grow up, we just lose all of that.
Right. Well, there's some connotation about rules, whether it's going to put you in a box, whether, sometimes what you don't know, but better you should know it than not know it, what the rules are. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if I know them, then then it's going to control me, as opposed to what we're talking about, which, let me tell you something, this is not my normal conversation. My normal conversation is, it'll all work out. Let's hug.
Well, and sometimes that does work.
But I can see why it would be very important to have this to have a contract and to understand certain things when you're getting involved with partnerships and relationships like this, because it does give you a place to come from. It does, it gives you some structure.
Well, to me, and that's freedom.
And
because
that's freedom.
You know what your baseline is.
Yes.
You know what the expectations are. And so that leaves you free because you're like, this is what's expected. This is the deliverable. And from there I can build, as opposed to, gee, I hope that hug is still working and it's the warm, fuzzy feeling.
Right.
So there is an element of freedom. But I think you're right that people fear it because of the unknown, because there's something else. And the other thing that you mentioned about, if I don't know, then I'm not going to be responsible. Here's the irony. When you are in business, you don't have the same protections that a consumer does, where the law is looking out for you because, well, you're just a consumer. What do you know? No. You have that business card. You're in business. You're on the same playing field as Google, as Microsoft, as any of the big boys. And ignorance of the law is never a defense. It might explain what happens, but it never excuses it. So it pays to know what the rules are, because if you put your head in the ground, you make your assets a bigger target.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because you're no different. Doesn't matter what regardless of the size, of the income of your business, whatever it is, you are in business.
You're in business, now, and I love the what I hear sometimes. Well, I'm just a small business. Who'll come after me? I know plenty of big companies that sue small businesses, not because they want your money. They know you don't have any, but you've done something to them that has hurt their business. Maybe you've labeled your product something that sounds very similar to one of theirs, and it's a
Well,
trademark
how do you
violation.
protect yourself with that? Oh, trademark.
Well, you got to do your homework. Just like when you pick the name for your company, the name for your products. You think you're being clever by just playing or riffing off of another product that's very well known. Well, that's exactly why you're doing it. You know, and that can cause all kinds of damage for the actual trademark holder, and they will come after you because even though you don't have the money, if a gazillion little businesses did that, well, now it's death by 1,000 cuts for the big guys.
So this is the kind of thing you do in your e-learning academy? Is this the kind of stuff you do?
It can be. It is on the the workshop level.
Uh-huh.
Depends on where the company is and what their issue is. But I mean, the Legal Leverage Academy at this point is dealing with fundamental types of baseline issues. I mean, we've got a course out there about how to keep your business out of court. Because there's really only a couple of things you need to know. And I don't care what type of case, employment, antitrust, regulatory, whatever. But there's a couple of fundamental building blocks. And if you keep those in mind, you can steer clear of a lot of headaches.
Like what? What are those things?
Like headache? Well, I'll tell you something. We touched on it a little bit before. The motivation to sue. If you and I have a good relationship and we have a contract and we've been working together, okay, something, happened, okay? I disappointed you somehow. You talk to me, we'll work it out. But if I say, what are you going to do? You going to be happy, Marilyn? At some point, you're going to say, no, Hannah, enough. I'm out this and this because you did this and this, and you're going to hold me accountable. If I'm not going to be responsible enough on my own and respect our relationship or our contract, then you're going to say, talk to the judge. The judge will help you clarify things.
What do you think of I don't know, Legal Zoom or Legal Shields, Legal Shields. What do you think of people using something like that to protect themselves?
Well, I think they play a role. I just hope people don't read more into it than it is. For different types of things. They're not a one-stop shop for all types of business needs.
We used to have a saying about this in the B&I group. When you have a problem, talk to the box.
Talk to the boss?
The box.
Oh, the box.
It comes in a box.
Oh,
right?
It comes in a box? It's a...
Talk to the box.
The thing is with any of those types of situations, though, I'm not as familiar with each of those platforms, so I don't want to speak one way or another. Mm-hmm. But still, it puts the burden on you as the business owner to call on them to say, hey, I need help with X, Y, Z.
So we have a question here. So
Yes.
Chris wants to know, what's the difference between a copyright and a trademark?
A copyright and a trademark. A copyright protects the form of expression. Think about the classic romance novel. Those ideas have been around forever, right? Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy wins girl back again. How many movies have been made like that, right? That by itself, that storyline, isn't protected. But think of all the different books and movies that have been made using that formula. They are protected. So it's the form of expression. It's how the words are used. It's how it's depicted. Now, a trademark, I know that two get confused very easily, and I can understand why. But a trademark is a word, a phrase, a graphic depiction that brings to mind the source of origin for goods. And actually, it's got an interesting background. Back in the days of medieval times in the merchant guilds, the different merchant guilds, to verify the authenticity of their wares, would put like a seal on things, like a wax seal or something like that. That became their trade mark, so that people knew that was authentic. That's Marilyn's product, and I can trust it, as opposed to something that's a knockoff or somebody who's doesn't have as high a quality. So I know I have consistency, and so that is a trademark, and they're very valuable. Back in the turn of the century, when the .com boom was all going great guns. Remember Pets.com? Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be online, everything for pets, and it had that sock puppet. They trademarked that sock puppet. And when Pets.com didn't make any money and went under, the sock puppet, that was the only asset they had, and they actually sold it for quite a few bucks. So trademarks can be very, very valuable.
So I have, I have a name of a like a book series that I want to do, but it's going to be other things. It's a brand. That's going to be trade. That's a trademark, right? That would be
Well,
trademark.
a brand can be trademarked. Book titles typically can't. So you have to figure out how to work the two together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so these are things that you want to protect yourself with. These are things that you want to know before you go out there and invest money and time and energy and all these things.
It's helpful, especially trademarks that, I mean, first of all, what's really great and I think wonderful for small businesses, if they have a unique selling proposition and their brand, and they protect their brand with a trademark, the nice thing is that you can exclude others from using it, which makes it even more exclusive and more unique.
And a lot of companies, and I know we might have touched upon this when we met, but a lot of companies are doing things online.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole nother ball of wax in protecting yourself online. So what are some of the key things that you can share for a company, whether it's a website? I mean, you said something about technology. You want to be careful when when you're patenting something. But we're going online. We're laying it all out there. Are there certain guidelines or certain things right off the bat that you've noticed in themes that you could share?
Well, I would encourage people to appreciate that just because it's the web doesn't mean it's the Wild West and that anything and everything goes. I think in the beginning people were a lot more cavalier about using others' images and just even taking articles without giving credit and so forth. Just because it's the internet, I mean, all of those intellectual property rules, they still apply. And so you want to give attribution where it's appropriate. If you're getting images, make sure that you have the right to use them. There's so many resources out there where you can license them. Look at the license. Is it for personal use? Is it for commercial use? If you are in business online, then that's commercial use. Make it the right fit. And then if you have actually a marketing website where you're selling something, then make it clear what your terms and conditions are, because it's just like a physical product. What are the terms of use? If somebody gets on your website and relies on it, to what extent should they be relying on it? Those are just a couple of the things.
Well, how do you know? I mean, here again, how do you know what to even ask? How do you know what's even a problem to even think about?
Well, that's part of the reason why I created the Legal
seriously,
Leverage Academy.
We're talking about, okay, so you create a cream.
Yeah.
You're going to think about, is it going to hurt somebody's face? Okay, you might think about that. But maybe I put something out. Do I have to worry about posting things that I think are helpful? That somebody can listen to me and think, and then nail me for it?
Well, I think with everything, there's a balancing act in terms of, is somebody presenting themselves to the public? What kind of authority and how much reliance can be placed on it? But, if somebody has an idea, there are resources that can help you sort that out. And I don't just mean lawyers and law firms, but, even an organization like SCORE for startups and small businesses. That is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And they do a terrific job in being able to mentor companies, help them think through, certain issues, help point them to resources that can help them identify potential, blocks. I mean, the idea is to help you grow your business and be successful.
That's somebody on the chat, Susiana in the chat said, why are we talking about lawsuits? I don't like talking about any of this stuff. I am doing this show because I don't like it. Is that a good reason? I don't like this stuff at all. I want to fight it. I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to believe it exists. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to spread the energy of lawsuits. I don't want to do any of that. But I also know that in order to grow my businesses, they're going to have to be, I'm playing in the big world, and there are going to be things that I have to protect myself so I don't have to deal with it. So I can do my good work, my advocacy, all of those things. And I know in my heart of hearts that there are some things like what Hannah's talking about that I have to do. Even though I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk it into being. I know I have to do it.
Well, it's just reality, just like
It's
the law
reality.
of gravity. I don't like when things start sagging, and but that's reality. And you do what you can. But the thing is, you can't manage a risk if you can't anticipate it. It's like crossing the street. People are on their cell phones, and then how many people run into cars or whatever. Well, but they're busy doing this. They'd rather be doing this. I understand that. There's other things we'd rather be doing too. But if you're going to be a responsible business owner, then managing risk it comes with the package.
And it's not necessary. It's to create the relationships.
Yes.
It's to let everyone know this is the expectations, mine. This is yours. Let's agree upon it.
Right.
It's to help the relationships work. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it's not. I mean, when you think about it in the right term, putting it down on paper helps people remember what they said and what they bought into.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a place to negotiate from again.
Right.
Otherwise, you have no place to negotiate from again.
Exactly, because especially over time, it's one thing if it's a short-term project, but if something is going on for many years, things change over time. People remember things differently over time. And so, I'm not advocating lawsuits, believe me. That's the last thing I want. And actually, this is the reason why I'm focusing more of my time on the education part, because people don't know what they don't know, yet they're supposed to know it. And then if they get blindsided by it, it takes away from their ability to do their good work, whether they're providing products or services and the people that they are helping. And, basically all of this helps to build the economy. So, and that is the freedom that you're ultimately looking for.
And yeah, ultimately this is going to make a big difference. So what other questions would I ask you? Like, what other questions would an entrepreneur want to know? We talked about contracts.
But I think let's look at the big picture.
Okay.
Of freedom. What I would encourage people to do is to look at their systems, because one thing that happens when businesses grow, especially rapidly, is that casual practices start to crumble under the weight of growth. It's like having a beautiful sandcastle and all of a sudden that wave comes. What have you built on? Well, you've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy making it beautiful and intricate, but then, boom, something happens. And I'll give you an example. This involved a company. It's been around now maybe 7 or 8 years. Okay, so it's not like one of these behemoths. Very successful. Actually was on the Inc. 500 list of fastest growing companies for 2 years in a row. But here's the situation. They're doing really well with one line of product services. And they thought, oh, we can grow, we can branch out over here. So they started to branch out over here. That was the good news. Problem is they had trouble delivering. So they would say, oh, Marilyn, we're going to have a program. We're going to have you come in. And, of course, they have this wonderful, presentation, and in the process of pitch. And they say, we have an offer for you. We're going to let you buy, X, Y, Z, and we're going to do this and this for you. And you say, that's great. So you buy it. And then halfway through that, they're like, you know what? We can do even more for you now. So now they're upselling you. All right? And we're going to take your prior investment and apply it to this. And it's only going to cost you this much more. And you're like, that sounds pretty good. So you go for that. And then there's the third one. A couple months later, we've got the ultimate. All right? And since you're this far, you'd be crazy not to take this. So you go for that. Trouble is, they didn't tell accounting what they were doing. So accounting is looking at each of these transactions instead of, $100 plus, I'm making the math real easy because
good.
$100 plus
Good.
an extra 50, no, they're billing you an extra 150. And then again, so accounting became a mess. And then when they had trouble delivering on that super deluxe Rolls Royce that they were promising, they were staring down the barrel of a lawsuit. And they reluctantly reluctantly negotiated a refund. But that was a system or a business example where even though Inc. 500, and you're like, wow, this has got to be great, they were outrunning their headlights. And their contract, they took somebody else's contract and tried to change the names, and they did an incomplete job of doing that. And
That's a mess.
It was a mess.
It's a mess.
But that's an example, not so much of, there was almost a lawsuit, but of systems not being in place, because good systems means you're managing risk on autopilot. That's what you want. You want repeatability, you want consistency, you want reliability, because that reliability, again, is what gives you freedom. Freedom to be pursuing other things, because you don't have to reinvent that wheel again. You've got a process, you've got a policy, you've got a system in place that makes it work, and you can depend on it.
When you talk about policies, are those policies, everybody has to have them for them to be legal? In other words, if I create a policy for my groups, let's say, as long as everybody gets the policies and they know that they're there, and does everybody have to sign off on them for them to be legal, or are they legal just because I say so?
Well, it's interesting. The law doesn't require you to have a policy.
Right.
You do that to make it easier for you, so people know what you expect in your organization. And if somebody signs off on a policy, yeah, that can kind of turn it into a contract. And that's a verification that, yes, they've received it. They're verifying that they've read it, that they understand it, that they're going to follow it. So, those are good things. But, situations happen when people don't have policies, where there are colossal disappointments. And then it becomes a question of, well, who's responsible for what? In an employment situation, if you don't have certain employment policies, then somebody's going to say, well, I didn't know that. Now, you may say, oh, because of your work experience, and just life experience, you may say, well, that's common sense. But common sense isn't that common, because it's a combination and a cumulative effect of all your life experiences and work experiences. So somebody at your point in life is going to look at it differently than somebody who's 18. Who thinks nothing bad will ever happen to them.
Exactly.
We all felt like that. So
right, but these things are, it's hard to cover your butt on every place you turn.
Well, and that's why it's a process, and why it's really good for responsible business leaders to keep their radar tuned for when they see something. There was one time when I was doing a presentation for a group, a contractor came up to me, and he was very proud of himself. He said, he does construction work, and he's in renovations, and he says, well, my contracts are 15 pages now. And I started laughing. It was like a badge of honor, and I said, really? And when you started out, it was much shorter. He says, oh, yeah. I said, and what happened? With each bad event, he goes, yep. Every time something happened, and it's like, well, it wasn't in the now it is in the contract.
But you can't, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't put enough in there on that level.
Well,
Can you?
People try. And that's how you learn, because you know what, when it costs you, people do. You know what, just for giggles, the next time you're in one of these home improvement stores, take a look at a ladder to climb up on the roof, right? Look at how many warning labels are on it. And I'll bet you everyone can be traced back to a lawsuit where somebody did something really stupid.
But that's the problem.
I know.
That's the problem. I used to teach special ed.
Yeah.
Right? And we had these meetings called IEPs, right? Which was between the school, the parent. I was always involved to make, for the education program of a child with special needs. There were documents upon documents upon documents. And one document explained the other document, which clarified the other document, which protected the other document. It was, and you keep we were having to rewrite the same thing over and over again, and it was a Band-Aid.
It is, because some people just don't understand.
The system doesn't understand.
Well, there's the system, and then there's the people in the system. And so you're trying to keep putting layers on it, like, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And some people don't. Some refuse to. which is why, unfortunately, there are these other mechanisms, courts where that of accountability to say, no, this is the way it is. I know this isn't the way you want it to be, but you know, here's the rules, here's the law, here's the facts, here's how it goes together, and sorry, you just don't like the law. That's another issue. Talk to Congress, or talk to your legislature. But
Right.
this is why we have a rule of law, so that we have a civilized society and not everybody's pulling in all these directions. And even with the rule of law, we've got enough chaos at times.
Chaos.
So if you didn't have it, you'd have even more and less freedom, because you'd really be coming at it from all sides.
And with what you're proposing,
Mm-hmm.
with what you're proposing to educate businesses on,
Yeah.
the more the more businesses that listen, the more businesses that open up to be educated about protecting, and the individuals protecting themselves as well, the less chaos we might have.
Yes, definitely. I think there's more understanding because people can identify potential problems sooner, and they have more flexibility in terms of the options available to address them and fix them. Think of it as car maintenance. Do you wait until everything falls apart and the engine's smoking? I actually had a friend in school whose father bought her a brand new Mustang, right? This was hot, so she could go back and forth to school in style. Well, one day she's crossing the bridge and there's smoke coming out from under the hood. And she's like, pulls into a gas station, opens up the hood. Mechanic says, "When's the last time you changed the oil?" She's like, "Oil change?"
What's that?
She goes home, "Daddy, I need a new car." But the thing is, without that maintenance, you will run it dry. Now, maybe some people whose business model is, I don't care, I'm going to take it to the bank as long as it goes, and when that shuts down, I've got another letterhead tomorrow and I'm up again.
Yes.
That's fine. They want to do that.
Oh my God.
There's all kinds of things that can deal with it. But I'm more interested in the responsible business leader who says, you know what, this is a legacy for my family, for the family of my employees, whose future I hold in my hand, for the consumers or the businesses my business serves. So I want to do the right thing because my reputation matters. I want to be reputable, and I want to be able to help more people because I've got some good stuff here, So when you put the right things and the right systems in place, it makes it easier. And, you create a business that you can be proud of.
What about solo entrepreneurs? People who don't, have employees.
Yeah.
What do you suggest that they do? Are there certain things?
Well, let's put it this way. I think they have the same issues, but their scale is not the same as the Googles or the Microsofts, okay? So they don't have, certainly the employment issues, but just because they're in business by themselves doesn't mean they don't have any. Certainly contract issues are something that they would want to keep their eye on. Their intellectual property, because presumably they have something for sale, whether it's a service, whether like you with your book and you want to be
Yes.
branding a title that you can turn into a series, and you don't want anybody else using your particular phrases.
Right.
There are some things that you can do to protect yourself. And the thing is, it's not just about keeping what you have. It's about using it and leveraging it to grow your business. To me, that's the more exciting part. And that's where the contracts and intellectual property comes in. And most people don't think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what you can't do, it's what you can do that you don't even realize the tools are available.
So, I'm looking. Let's see. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, go.
And a comment.
Okay.
So you have a responsible businessman,
Yes.
woman, and they went and they got a form, terms and conditions and all that
Yeah.
from somewhere, and it's a good start. But it really, nobody knows as a businessman. No, you don't know what to have in there. So if I would come to you, and I would say I want you to write one for me or to recommend some, isn't it more likely that you would know about, that you would have a source for something for that particular business that was already done and proven? Yeah, you also have to have this and this. Even though you don't know anything about home improvement, you would know that there is a form at somewhere that has almost everything that a home improvement business needs to have in theirs, and the only way to get this is to come to somebody like you,
Well, I don't know that somebody like me is the right thing.
an attorney.
Well, an attorney, someone
Practicing.
who's practicing who can represent you.
Right.
Okay, I'm a recovering attorney.
To represent you.
Well, because basically what you're saying is I have a home improvement business,
Yeah.
if I understand you correctly, and I want to know whether my terms and conditions are sufficient.
Sufficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they are applying their legal expertise to your particular situation, and that is giving legal advice.
Okay.
Okay, because that's representing
So
your
that's
best
what-
interests.
okay.
All right. But there are people out there that can do that, because home improvement type businesses, there are all kinds of businesses out there, and there are certain common building blocks and things that would make sense to have.
Right.
in.
That the individual would not know, but the attorney would
Know, right? And it could be that you're in a particular type of home improvement. Maybe you're doing waterproofing of basements. I'm just picking that out. Okay. Now, water has certain very negative characteristics when it's in the wrong spot. I mean, so you might want to have some additional protections for that type of business. That if somebody's doing roofing, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that's where the tailoring comes in and the tweaking. So.
Well, I could keep on going.
I know.
This is fascinating to me because I don't like it. I mean, I don't want to be that person who thinks
But-
about the lawsuits.
But it's part of business.
But it's part of business, and I'm seeing the value and the freedom without focusing on the lawsuit. Just focusing on the growth
Yes.
is where I'm hanging my hat.
Right.
And as a solo entrepreneur, as a business and life coach, I'm thinking of the things that would protect my stuff, even though my stuff may not be tangible.
Right.
There's a lot of us out here where our stuff is not concrete. It's not a book. It's not a product. It's a service. And there are things that we all can do to protect ourselves so that we can grow our businesses, because I'm in it to help the world, but I'm in it to make money too.
Well, yeah.
You know?
And the thing is how are you managing expectations? And in a way, it's marketing. Marketing puts the bar up here in terms of, we can do everything. Well, can you really can you really deliver on that? I mean, I understand some marketing and sales, what they call puffing, but there comes a point where the rubber meets the road. And it's like, what can somebody count on you to really deliver? And what's it going to look like? And how do you convince them that this is all I can really do? Because guess what? If you don't follow my suggestions or follow this, I can't guarantee a particular coaching result, for
Right.
example.
And I think one thing, and we haven't talked about this, and I want you to talk about some more of how people find you and stuff, because believe it or not, time is zipping by. But one of the things I'm going to look into is people come to my home.
Okay.
I don't think I have any protection. I got to figure that out.
Yeah.
If somebody steps on the wrong step
Yeah.
and trips. Do you have it?
I have a rider on.
Right, or I
Or
have to go
insurance,
check
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that would be an important thing for anybody who has an in-home business where people are coming to visit you.
That's a good question to ask. I mean, maybe it's part of your homeowners. Maybe you
I
need
have
an
to go
additional
find out.
rider.
Yeah.
But that's just it. What I want to do is encourage people to have the conversation, to spark the thought process, and from there it can grow. It's just about getting more information. It may not be as bad as you think. It may be simple. It may even be covered already.
Maybe.
But then you'll get the peace of mind and the confidence that, I'm in control. I've got more freedom.
So your institute, your academy,
Yes.
would anybody come to your academy to figure out what questions, to even ask, to figure out what do I need as far as what's a DBA, what's a this, what's a that? Will they find that?
Well, I think for that type of granular level, I think what you're talking about is more one-to-one consulting.
Okay.
In terms of, what types of contracts should a business look at. And then, when it comes down to determining, well, maybe I want this, then you can take that and have a lawyer draft it for you, just like we talked about, the home improvement situation where it's specific, because one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
And what always kind of concerns me was when somebody says, well, I have one of those contracts over here. All I have to do is change the names. Mm-hmm. To me, that's like a used Band-Aid. Yeah, really. You know, it worked for somebody else. Maybe it'll help you a little, but there may be other stuff in there that's going to be ugly and nasty for you.
So your academy has what? Tell her.
The academy right now has 3 programs.
Okay.
But the one that I'm most excited about, because, you know, kind of going back to what you were talking about at the very beginning, where people are afraid of this, I think business leaders carry more baggage about the law and lawyers and lawsuits than they realize. And so what I have that's kind of fun is a legal literacy assessment, which is a 10 question. It's not a bar exam. It has nothing to do with your substantive knowledge. Is this a contract? Is this bind? Nothing like that. But just to get a handle on, you know, just some common myths and beliefs that people carry into a relationship that may be not serving them as well.
So it's not, and we talked about this, so I'm really glad you brought this up. It's not to make anybody wrong.
No.
None
of this is wrong.
None of this is wrong. This is about, you know, we all come to situations with different experiences.
Right.
And so this is about how to grow your experience.
Exactly. And so it's 10 online questions. And actually that is even set up as a separate website as legalliteracyassessment.com. And you can go there. It's 10 easy questions, multiple choice. You know, you keep score yourself, so there's no online scorekeeping where somebody's looking over your shoulder. And at the end, you'll get some feedback that will give you basically an assessment of what your management, your leadership style means for the legal risk in your business. And, you know, there's a short one, there's a longer version that you can request, and that's just for information and for your own self-knowledge. And then, you know, people have different risk tolerances. But it gives you an idea of what you may be trading off that you don't realize. And that's the whole point. It's about raising awareness so that people have a better understanding of, well, you know, this has been my approach. Now, when your business, if you're a solopreneur, that may be fine. But as your business grows, or if you have aspirations to grow and have multiple locations, be in multiple states or around the world, then, you know, it's well worth a few minutes of your time just to be able to see where you stand and you know, how you might be able to improve it.
Yeah, like I said on some of the posts that I put for this, knowledge is power. You know,
it
and
is.
You don't know what you don't know, but you know it's worth a really good shot to find out what you know, what you don't know, what you need, and to maximize who you are in your business.
Well, and that's just it. It's about being able to have businesses reach their full potential. I mean, that's really why I'm doing this. You know, because it is a lot more lucrative to be on the other side of the fence, and especially with the lawsuits, because at that point the meters are running wild. Right. There's only so much that you can do in order to rein in those costs because the train's left the station. You know, which is why law firms focus on that. You know,
and they are really busy.
Well, they're really busy, they're just horribly expensive. So this is a lot less expensive. You know, it's an investment in your legal literacy.
So thank you, Hannah.
My pleasure.
Not just for being here, but for doing this, because, you know, a couple of weeks ago we had a gentleman on who was a marketer, who took his expertise in marketing, and he was marketing for the big boys about food, and he turned it around. And now I know this about food. I know this about what they're doing. Now let me tell you how you can protect yourself. So so thank you for being out here educating us, the rest of us. 'Cause I ain't going to law school. But give me something that I need, right? I'm not going to be the attorney. Just educate me to know some things, to know what I need to ask, or to know that I need to ask something. And
right.
So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Now, you've written some books too, right?
Yes.
So tell because we're almost out of time. It's amazing.
My goodness.
So tell us what books, where we find them.
Well, I have one book called The Business Guide to Legal Literacy, and it's available on Amazon or through any other bookseller. And then there's another book that I co-authored called Champions: Knockout Strategies for Health, Wealth, and Success. So those are 2 that are out there.
And Champions is about what?
Champions is a compilation. Okay. And so I have one chapter in that, but it covers a lot of different topics beyond beyond just business.
And if somebody has wants to consult with you or has a company that wants to consult with you, where do they find you?
Oh, just come on over to the Legal Leverage Academy. There's opportunities to contact me there. There's a lot of resources there. I'll be happy to help whoever I can. Try to get ahead of the curve. Because just like your marketer, I work for big organizations.
Yes.
And, I've seen it on the inside in a number of different ways. And I just, the big companies have the deep pockets to buy their way out of trouble. The smaller ones don't. And that's what I really want to be able to help, because you've got goods and services that need to go out there that help people. And that's really the foundation of our economy. It really is. And so they need help.
And we are today, we are truly the foundation of the economy. And we are taking it upon ourselves to have our own businesses, to do these things. And we have to educate ourselves in many, many ways. And this is a big one of them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So thank everyone out there for tuning in today. I appreciate it so much. If you have any questions, please connect with me, Marilyn at MarilynShannon.com. Go to my website, MarilynShannon.com. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help. Hanna, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Lots of fun.
Yes, lots of fun. We have lots of fun here. So tune in next week when we have lots of more fun. Bye, everybody.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.